Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Leadnap Gaming. Today we're going to continue our Explore the Verse series and we're actually going to do the Mercenary missions. At least one Mercenary mission. There'll probably be a couple of these doing the Mercenary missions, but yeah, don't let your screen fool you. No, the footage is not incorrect. Yes, it says respond to ECN alert, and we're going to get to that in a moment, but I just want to quickly throw out there too, I'm going to talk a little bit about CitizenCon and a little bit about the schedule, and then I really kind of want to talk a little bit about the Carrack, which is coming out at CitizenCon. At least we believe it is. CitizenCon is sponsored by Anvil, so there's no reason to not really think that. But that's a big deal because this is one of the most anticipated ships. We've waited years for it, and we're days away from it, which is really kind of exciting. Now, I want to spend a little time talking about this as a game changer. And then at the very end, I've got a little something special planned. Depending on how CitizenCon goes, maybe. So, let's just jump right into it. So, like I said, yes, it says respond to ECN alert, and we're running out to my defender, and we're gonna go do a combat mission. And if you've watched my videos in the last 2 weeks, most of you have, my release discussion video was originally topic for a talkover like this for Explore the Verse, and it got bigger. It kind of ended up needing to be its own thing, and so it was. But obviously then last week you probably saw that I was doing a respond to ECN alert mission, and well, that mission was broken. So here I was trying it again, trying to get this done for Explore the Verse, and unfortunately it just didn't work. As you're going to see some of it, it just, yeah, kind of flopped. So we are going to transition to a Mercenary mission, so stay tuned for that. Don't think that your eyes are being deceived here. CitizenCon, well, so the schedule's been released. For those that don't know, you can go to the RSI website and go to the CitizenCon tab and see it. It kind of goes over all the different presentations and things going on, and there's some interesting stuff there, and I want to take a couple minutes to just kind of go into depth on a couple of the things I think we're going to see. So, obviously, it all opens up with Chris Roberts giving a keynote speech. It's very possible we see the Carrack opened up right out the gate, which would be really cool, but we are talking about the Masters of Hype, so I expect to see some snippets of it, but not the actual Carrack necessarily then. Later on, there is a piece on the prisons, and this one is actually interesting because there's an open slot in the Anvil Auditorium, the kind of main presentation stage, that actually is left open so that Twitch streamers who are not, you can only watch the one on Twitch, will be able to actually catch the recording of the prison discussion. And that'll be interesting just because obviously that's a big new gameplay loop that we've not seen yet, and that's just going to kind of allow everyone to see that. So obviously that one's very important for what CIG is trying to roll out at CitizenCon this year. There's also some later stuff in the evening, which I think builds intentionally, where one, they're talking about new ship technology. For those that don't know, CitizenCon is actually really just a giant technical demo for CIG to show off a lot of, we hear all year about all the back-end work they do to build things, all this tech they're building and stuff like that, and CitizenCon acts as both a way for them to show that to us, but actually also even allow them to kind of market that potentially to other game companies as technology they could use to, build their game, which is an important revenue stream discussion for another day. That said, the shipbuilding tech and stuff like that is a presentation later on in the evening. That one halfway through begins another one that talks about the universe building tech and how CIG is building the universe out with all these different systems, which if you think about it, it's important for two reasons. Well, one, we only have one system in the game right now, and I know previously I've discussed, microtech no longer appears on our star map. Some of the lore stuff says it's not in the Stanton system, though recent documentation and announcements from CIG have said that Microtech is part of the Stanton system, so we'll have to see there. I'm actually hoping it's a separate system because the Carrack's a jump point scanner, which means we're potentially have to have jump points coming. It doesn't mean we're going to get them because obviously we have a reclaimer and there's no salvage. But after both of those have ended up concluding, at the very end is a you're not going to want to miss closing keynote presentation from Chris Roberts. I would expect the Carrack is unveiled here. They've built up to it with some of their evening presentations, and I think that's going to be kind of big. So, speaking of the Carrack, like I said, it's a game changer. We're on the eve of the release of one of the most anticipated ships in the game, and unlike the Defender, which we saw some kind of leaked images for and stuff like that, CIG has kept the lid on the Carrack, which is especially interesting because even though we've had some citizen-made, ship tours and stuff on YouTube, which were incredibly well done. If you haven't seen them, go search them out, guys, because they're actually really cool to see. But we don't know a lot about really anything about the interior of the Carrack, because what is so interesting about the Carrack is all the concept ever showed us was the 2-story bridge at the very front and exterior diagrams highlighting features of the ship like the snub fighter hangar. So it's really an interesting thing. We have no idea what the inside of the Carrack looks like. And, one of the things, some of the things here that are game-changing about the Carrack, well, for starters, the Carrack is a little bit larger than the Caterpillar, which is interesting because the Caterpillar is much larger than the Constellation series. And I bring that up because it's actually kind of funny. The Constellation, we a lot of times think of it as like, wow, the Connies are a big ship, right? And now people are going to be flying Carracks around. And it's not to say we don't have bigger ships, Reclaimer, 890, right? But what I'm saying is the Carrack is a very big ship. And it is obviously meant for long-term exploration. And so making the assumption here that some of the values that were given to it in concept remain, the Carrack has almost double the cargo capacity of a Caterpillar. Now, that is an interesting thing because part of me thinks then that the Carrack's actually going to be even bigger than it, like if we look at the fleet view of it next to a Caterpillar, you can kind of see how it's not dramatically bigger than a Cat, but a Cat has a ton of space dedicated to cargo, which you could make out where that would go on the Carrack, but it is an interesting thought, right? But you're going to be able to move a shit ton of cargo on your Carrack. I mean, for me, if the Carrack has the 1,000 SCU of cargo that it's supposed to, there's no reason really for me to own a Cat at that point. Not today. There actually is one in the future. We'll talk about that some other day. Just because the Cat is a little armored beast at times. Though again, we're talking about an Anvil ship here. Not great shields, but it theoretically should have heavy armor. And we don't have armor mechanics in the game. But that is a ton of cargo on something that's actually bigger than the Cat. And for those that don't know, quantum jump speeds are actually determined by the mass of the ship. The Carrack will thus be slightly faster than a Caterpillar in quantum jump. Yeah. So, and in theory, you should have even further range because it's a long-range exploration ship. So I bring that up, one, because obviously there's a big cargo element, and the Carrack is supposed to have these kind of module bays, which means that you might not always be able to configure your Carrack to have 1,000 SCU of cargo, if that kind of makes sense, which is an interesting thought. But where I was going before with that I kind of want to circle back to is we really have no idea what the inside of the Carrack's going to look like, which is a pretty cool and wild thought, and it is really exciting. And again, we saw little snippets of the Defender as it was coming out, right? CIG was releasing some of those. There was some Leaks channel stuff coming out, and they've kept the lid on that, which also probably says a little bit about some of the leaks, right? Like, this is a very heavily anticipated ship, and no one's got anything on it. Really makes you wonder about some of those leaks, doesn't it? But one of the other things that's kind of revolutionary about the Carrack that kind of falls off the radar is the snub fighter. Now, I know you're sitting there and you say, well, right, but the Constellation has a snub. Right. The Constellation series has snub fighters, but they can't be used. The Carrack will be able to use its snub fighter, and unlike the poor owners of 890s, well, they're not monetarily poor, they are now if they bought a couple, but it didn't come with any type of a snub or something that you flew out of its hangar, but the Carrack does, which is kind of big, because that really means, that you might actually now take your Carrack down to a planet, land it somewhere kind of remote and obscure, and then fly your snub out to find a mine or something, or harvest some things off a planet's surface or what have you, right? Just because it's an exploration ship doesn't mean that it can't fill into some of these other roles in the verse that we use with other ships. And in a weird way, right now, the Carrack is kind of a good all-arounder based on what we've seen about it. And so it's really going to be exciting to kind of see that. There is, of course, also the question, does the Carrack really become the first truly multi-crewed ship? Because if you're going to take the snub down to a planet, you're going to leave your Carrack out in space, you probably want to leave somebody on it. Just a thought. And then, there's kind of some features in it as well that I think are going to be interesting. One of the big cool things in the concept was the kind of armored glass, which is interesting again because the Carrack doesn't appear to have this major combat role. Almost the Constellation series might potentially be a better fighter than the Carrack would be in this regard. But I'm interested to see how the armored glass thing works. This isn't actually a unique concept. The Terrapin also has an armored glass thing. Except it's a little weird in the way that one works. But that only works when you turn on power to the ship. Right? Actually, not power to the ship, but when you do the landing gear. So I'm interested to see, am I going to have a button on my pilot's chair that lets me deploy the armored glass? Or is this, when I put my landing gear down, because you'd still be able to see down, will that deploy the armored glass? I kind of hope it's the former, not the latter, just because that's a cool feature, and if CAG begins implementing things like that, we could very soon see one of the features I desperately want to see in Star Citizen, even though it doesn't do anything, is being able to change the lighting state on the ship. Because some of the power off light states are incredible, and it would be kind of cool, especially if you were taking a long trip on a Carrack, to be able to potentially turn the lights down a smidge, right? But that's that. And those are just some kind of thoughts I had on the Carrack. Again, these are just kind of voiceovers to give you something to listen to while we're watching the Explore the Verse series. So, obviously, not fully fleshed out there, but just some stuff to kind of begin to think about. Before I kind of close this out, I just want to say, of course, in the comments below, what are you guys excited about seeing at CitizenCon? And if you have a Carrack, just how excited are you, right? Because I'm starting to get to the point that, I can't sleep because I'm so excited for the Carrack to finally get here. Because it is such a beautiful ship, and I cannot wait to fly one. In closing, board gamer threw out there, are they going to destroy Port Olisar at CitizenCon? And I don't think they are, just because, well, it's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other, right? Because on the one side, that is the kind of stand-in for Crusader, which we don't have yet. But at the same time, we've got Area 18, Microtech potentially, Lorville, Levski, Grimhex. There's all of these other places to spawn now that, yeah, Olisar is kind of a little unnecessary at this point. So with that said, just to kind of close it out, just a little farewell to Port Olisar, remembering all the great years, great times, great fights, great grieving. No, I've never grieved people at Olisar. I know someone's going to hit me in the comments now because I said that, but just a touch of farewell to it as we close out here. So, If you haven't, subscribe down below. We are doing the giveaway still for an LTI token. Your comment and subscription get you in on that, and I will catch you all next time.